Islam, Islam, Islam. First, I rise to my highest height, giving all praises due to Allah. I give all honors to all true and divine prophets, including Jesus, Muhammad, Buddha, Confucius, and the prophet of these days and times, Prophet u.s.a. And I extend those honors to the prophets in all forms. Islam, peace. Yeah, Islam, Mo. So, I guess we're gonna just probably have a back and forth build, because we don't have a predetermined lesson course. We didn't really get to kind of establish that. So one thing that kind of came to mind, excuse me, one thing that kind of came to mind was that there are a lot of controversies within the Moorish movement. A lot of things that Moors, feel one way or another way with. And although Moorish science is what, binds us, and that there's much more in common that we have than we disagree with, these disagreements are perceived so major that it causes, rifts. And, us within this temple, we kind of looked at, everybody's perspective, be it within the Moorish Science Temple of America and outside of the Moorish Science Temple of America, the various different lineages. And, we're still learning, what I'm saying? We still in communication with, various different Moors, in different walks of life and what have you. But, we had, two demonstrations, particularly the one last week by the Grand Sheik, that, was very, very controversial in terms of the message. But I think that we make a very strong case in the way that we illustrate our positions. And so, although what we say is very controversial, we don't get a lot of blowback because Moorish science challenges you to, show and prove in the way that they say in the Nation of Gods and Earth, Nation of Islam. It challenges you to show what you know according to proof. Islam, and so we do that. So I kind of want to pose to the Moors a question, and I encourage participation. This particular question, I don't believe in a such thing as no wrong answers. There are wrong answers to questions, but this particular question, there are questions that don't have no wrong answers because they are so open-ended or opinion-based that you can't necessarily say a wrong answer on it. But the question I kind of want to pose to the Moors is this: what do you think in the Moorish movement, however you define it? We've already given our definition of it in the past, but like I said, I want to leave it as open-ended as possible and let the spirit that's present within this meeting kind of guide the conversation. What do you feel, and we'll go in order of Moors who speak up, what do you feel is the most controversial thing that Moors debate about or disagree on? What do you think is the most controversial? So the floor is open, Moors. Again, the objective of the meeting is not to, cause controversy, but to address controversy. The only way you're going to deal with controversy is to address it. So, so this is open-ended. What do you think is the most controversial subject matter in Moorish science? You don't have to say what you think on it, but what do you think Moors argue about the most or debate about the most or disagree on the most?
Islam.
The floor is Islam, Sheikh. The floor is yours.
Islam. I think one of the biggest things is that part and parcel of the government. Some believe that we should be separated, and that's our divine constitution. That was our constitution, and that's our government, and we should have nothing to do with the government. And we should break off and do our own thing. That we're separate, but that's what I believe is the
okay. Those are two different ones, though.
Okay.
The part and parcel versus part and partial one.
Yeah.
Right. That's one thing that Moors disagree on. And who is the said government in the divine constitution and bylaws? And so I don't want to skip over anybody's response. So we're going to kind of delve into this one real quick. Which can somebody get the act for the Sheik that he's referencing when he talk? We'll look at the part and parcel / partial, and we'll
Islam.
also Islam. Hold on 1 second, Sheik. The all we want is the one with the part and parcel. You don't have to even read the whole act. Just the part. You say up to the part where it says part
That's
and
Act
parcel.
6.
Either act that says it. Yeah.
Act
It's,
6 with
Act
us.
5.
let's
With
do that
us,
one first.
all members must proclaim their nationality, and we are teaching our people their nationality and their divine creed, that they may know that they are part and parcel of this said government, which you was referring to. They argue about this said government.
Right. So there you go. Which act is that, by the way, Sheik, for the edification?
Act 6.
Okay. So what the Sheik just broke down is Act 6 of the Divine Constitution and bylaws given to us by the Prophet Noble u.s.a. And there are two controversies in what he read. So the first controversy is where it states part and parcel, P-A-R-C-E-L, or part and partial, P-A-R-T-I-A-L. So there seems to be a discrepancy of what the original format was written in that particular law that the prophet gave us. All right. So some more say that ain't the right divine constitution and bylaws. Yours says part and parcel. Oh no, that's not the right divine constitution and bylaws because it says part and partial, not parcel. And so we're gonna address that controversy. How basically my grand sheik he broke this down to us many years ago. Some of us have been all the way along the journey. Some of us might not have been here for that particular degree, but we're gonna go through it today. And the second controversy that the sheik brought up was the said government, right? So some Moors interpret the said government, and said in law, as I always say, means before mentioned. So some Moors argue that that excerpt said government is talking about the government, the Moorish Science Temple of America government. And some Moors interpret that law to say the said government is the United States of America. And so these are two highly debated topics in the Moorish community, from my opinion. And so somebody else chimed in. They wanted to add one on. I want to just know who that Moor was, so we can go to that Moor next. Was that you, Sheikh Muhammad, or was that someone else
Islam.
that had that? Okay, so we're gonna briefly deal with the two controversies that the Sheikh presented us with, but we want to try to keep it to one. But his just came in a package deal anyway, because it was basically in the same excerpt. So that we're gonna deal with those two, and then we're gonna hear what Sheikh Muhammad believes is the most contested, and then we'll go down. We'll go down from there.
Oh no, I was just added on to what the brother was saying.
Oh, Sheikh.
Yeah, the Sheikh was saying.
Okay,
Yes.
I'm sorry. So you
Because
want to add that in real quick before we address it?
yeah, I know you want to explain it, but when most people look at Act 6, they don't take into question Act 4 and Act 5 that comes prior to it. It's in sequential order for a reason. When you look at Act 5, it mentions said government, and in Act 4 it tells you the government. So when you read 4, 5, and 6 consecutively, it tells you everything that the prophet had on mind. Is just some more take things out of order. That I said peace.
Islam. So the Sheikh, went from a student to an adept in a lot of this Moorish information. So naturally, he already knew the answer to that. But I'm going to reiterate the answer in my own words, even though he eloquently explained it, just to make sure that everybody got what he said. Right? His argument, which is our argument, the said government is referring to the United States of America. And how do we deduce this? Because we look up what the word said means in law, and we're not going to do it for brevity, but you can do it on your own. You can pause this video if you're watching it in the future. And if you're listening right now, just Google said legal definition. And you'll see that it means before mentioned. S-A-I-D. Like I said something, but in law, when it says said before another word, it means before mentioned. So the before mentioned government, as Sheikh Muhammad said, this term, said government, was used twice. Once in Act 6 and once in a previous Act, Act 5. As you recall when I said you could use either law to explain, because that's mentioned twice, the said government. First in Act 5 and then next is Act 6. And if you're reading them in sequential order from Act 1 to Act 7, then the before mentioned is there. Can we look at Act 4 so we can somebody give us Act 4 so we can look at what the said government was?
Islam. Islam, Act 4, the Morrison Temple of America's Divine Constitution and Bylaws. All members must preserve the holy and divine laws, and all members must obey the laws of their government, because by being a Moorish American, you are a part and parcel of the government and must live this life accordingly. Islam.
I'm sorry, I had my phone mute. I was looking at something else. That was Act 4 you just read?
Islam, indeed.
Okay. So can we get Act 5 as well? Let's look at Act 5 as well.
Islam. Continuing on to Act 5. This organization of the Moorish Science Temple of America is not to cause any confusion or to overthrow the laws and constitution of the said government, but to obey hereby. Islam.
Okay, Islam. I just want to be clear. So I don't have my divine constitutional bylaws in front of me. So Act 4 and Act 5 both reference said government. Correct?
No.
Okay,
The
I'm
first
sorry,
time
because
said government.
I looked over for a second.
Oh, it's fine.
I'm sorry, go
I'll
ahead, Chief.
explain it. So Act 5 is the first time this term is used in the Divine Constitution and bylaws. So where we have to follow the word government. Government is first used in Act 4. I'm gonna read it again. All members must preserve the holy and divine laws, and the members must obey the laws of the government, because by being a Moorish American, you are part and parcel of the government and must live the life accordingly. So this being our divine constitution, the first sentence references holy and divine laws. Sentence 2, which brings up a second clause, is talking about the law of the land, the supreme law of the land, the laws of the government. This supreme law of the land is mentioned in Act 5, where the government is now said government because it was before mentioned in Act 4. Act 5, the organization of the Moorish Science of America is not to cause any confusion or to overthrow the laws of the Constitution of the said government, but to obey hereby. Islam.
Islam. Okay, so I see now. My apologies, Moors. You know, I was on the highways and byways, so I'm in my vehicle now. I don't have my Moorish literature in front of me, but there's something missing from the explanation that's gonna make it full circle, because this is the reason why it's still hotly debated, because they'll say, well, the said government is not the government they're talking about. The laws you got to obey and that you part and parcel of is the Moorish Science Temple of America. And that's how the argument becomes circular and it never gets addressed. Here's the missing piece. When you want to understand the national side of the movement of the Moorish Science Temple of America, there's 2 degrees that relate to this, but I'm going to use the primary one first and then the simple one second. Is you got to look at the divine warning by the prophet to the nations. You must look at this, because that's what tells you said government. The second thing that tells you what said government is on if you have a nationality card from the Moorish Science Temple of America, when you look on the bottom of that card, it's Prophet Noble Dwali, a quotation from him. I am a citizen of the u.s.a. Now, there's a myth that goes around in the Moorish community that u.s.a, and this is what some of them use to try to dispel this argument, but has no substance or foundation. They claim that u.s.a means unity, salvation, Allah. When everyone in the world knows what u.s.a acronym means, especially when you preface it to say you were a citizen of it, anybody in the world will interpret that from the time of the prophet, from before the time of the prophet, up until present day, that means United States of America. If you're a citizen of U.S.A., How are you a citizen of unity and salvation in Allah? How are you a citizen of that? You understand? So this is a myth that has no foundation that more spread. It just sounds good. Like Islam means I, self, Lord, and master, when Islam is a Semitic word, and I, self, Lord, and master are all English words. And when you look at the etymology of the word Islam, it means peace, like the Prophet said. But Moors propagate that. So that's another controversy. I shouldn't have brought that up. But can we get in the warning? Well, we got to pull up the warning for a second. I don't know if one of the sheiks, can any sheik pull up any part of the warning that insinuates that the government that the prophet is talking about the United States of America? I don't want to have to Google it and then tell you what verse. I know we got masters in here.
Islam. Okay. Islam. I am hereby calling on all true citizens that stand for a national three government and the enforcement of the Constitution to help me in my great missionary work, because I need all support from all true American citizens of the United States of America. Help me to save my people who have fallen from the constitutional laws of the government. Islam.
That's it. Islam. We don't need to spend. If you it's so many more references that more could name in that document, but he pulled out a perfect one. That's beautiful. That's all we need. Someone who refutes what we're saying, pull up the divine constitution and bylaw and show us where we wrong. Because we see u.s.a spelled out United States of America. Where do we find any of the prophets' work, unity, salvation, Allah, relating to that acronym, or even written in succession, unity, salvation, Allah, as some type of thing you can become a citizen of, or any way you can frame it? Show me in the prophet's words. It's not there. But we can show you the u.s.a. We can show you the prophet advocating the Constitution of the United States of America and the laws of the government. Teaching Moors to be better citizens. Not better citizens of unity, salvation, Allah, but better citizens of the United States of America. And that brings us to the next point. And matter of fact, let me open the floor and let anybody add on. But the next point takes us into what the part and parcel or part and partial is talking about. That whole debate. We're going to get into that next. I want to open the floor for any questions or comments that Moors want to say before we continue. All right, so we're just going to continue. All right, I think it's safe to say that we established what we're saying. So on to the next part. So there's a debate also. Part and parcel and part and partial are mentioned more than once. One of those terms is believed to be true. You understand? Like, this is something. There's no dispute that there's a part and in the Moorish. So it's really only a dispute of the word partial or parcel. Okay? So originally the prophet used one of these two terms. But something the Grand Sheikh broke down in a demonstration in one of my many private lessons and stuff like that is, what's the difference? If you substitute one word or the other, how does it change the substance of the meaning of where it's used? So before we look up partial and parcel, and I'm gonna ask Brother Jeff, and if he has it handy, or maybe even the Sheikh Zadik, or someone else who may have a Black's Laws dictionary somewhere between the first and fourth edition, preferably. But I don't even think it really makes a difference for this particular argument. So, part and parcel, part and partial. Can somebody read both instances in the Divine Constitution and Bylaws where we see that? Or y'all Moors with me? Islam?
Islam, I got you. I'm here.
Islam. Okay.
Islam.
I read the Act 5 and Act 6 for the Moors.
Wait, actually, before you start, can I get a couple of Islams if y'all following me? If we all on the same page?
Islam.
Islam, more y'all sleeping? We got a few people up in here.
Islam, more.
Islam. There we go. Islam. I just want to make sure we all, you know what I'm saying, on the same page going forward. I'm not getting any. There we go. You know what I'm saying? I just want to make sure, because y'all don't ask questions, so I just want to make sure that at least I know we all on one page. Islam. So I'm sorry, Sheikh, you can go ahead. Appreciate you, Abdar. I'm sorry, brother. What's your name, if you don't mind me asking?
Abdul Rahim.
Okay, all right. Abdul Rahim. Okay. Okay, I'm sorry. That's a spelling I haven't seen before. But I love Islamic names. I just wanted to pronounce your name right and give you that respect. Islam. I'm sorry, Sheikh. You can continue.
Islam. All right. So the two instances in which this phrase is used is first used in Act 4 and then again in Act 6. In Act 4, it states, all members must preserve these holy and divine laws, and all members must obey the laws of the government, because by being a Moorish American, you are a part and parcel of the government and must live the life accordingly. Now we continue on to Act 6. This is a pretty big act, so I'm just going to read the line in question. Islam. With us, all members must proclaim their nationality, and we are teaching our people their nationality and their divine creed, that they may know that they are a part and parcel of this said government. Islam.
Okay, so as we can see clearly, the prophet is using this phrase, part and parcel or part and partial, in reference to the government. Am I correct?
Islam, one day.
Islam. Okay, I just want to make sure I'm correct, because I don't hear everything, because I might, get distracted. I'm sorry, Mo's like I got the ADD. No, not really. I'm just looking at different things or whatever. But in terms of those particular excerpts, and the Sheikh is confirming with me now, and I trust my Sheikh, but in my memory, this is referring to being a part of the government and maybe something else, right? Part and parcel or part and partial. All right, so can we get those two terms? I believe parcel will come first in the dictionary, so we'll look at parcel first, but it's not saying we advocate in one or the other. What we're going to establish is it don't make a difference. When you look at it, it's implicit. It's implicitly saying the same thing.
Really?
Islam.
Islam, Sheikh. I just wanted to mute everybody's mic. I didn't want everybody to get recorded saying anything they didn't want, public or whatever.
Oh, okay. Islam. Which one you said you want a parcel first? Or partial?
Yes. Yeah. Partial, because it's just it makes more sense for you just to go to the first word instead of going backwards in the dictionary. But it's up to
parcel.
You. It don't matter.
Well, this is out of the Black Law Dictionary, 4th edition. Parcel, noun, of course, small package, a bundle, seat package. Also goes on a part or a portion of land. And let me see, parcels, description of property, formally set forth in the veins together with the boundaries thereof in order to its easy identification. And partial.
Islam. Islam.
Yeah,
Gresham wanted to say something. Islam Gresham.
Islam, right there. That was the word was the little partial of land. So it was like, like Amir gonna go into the degree is like we not gonna bicker over that word, because like being partial and parcel, even being like that could be dealing with government, and the parcel could be dealing with the land. So like we're not gonna argue with more over either which word they want to utilize, because we can still demonstrate that degree no matter what word they use in Acts 6.
Oh.
You know what I'm saying? So it don't matter what word they use. We could demonstrate either or. So I always, advocate to the Moors, like, we're not gonna be fighting over that word with Moors, yo. That's a waste of time. The other word they want to use, we can still substantiate our position. Peace.
Islam. So the key things that ring out to me is basically the Grand Sheikh said, parcel of land, and also the talking about basically ownership within the boundaries. I heard the word boundaries. So when you hear phrases like, the claimant prophet said, without your something to the effect of, somebody got to help me out here, but without your free national name, you have no true wealth, or something to that effect. Anybody with me?
Islam.
Islam. So actually, matter of fact, can we read that excerpt?
Is that of the divine warning?
Yeah, let's just use the divine warning. We don't have to read multiple sources.
Money doesn't make the man. It is the free national standards and power that makes a man a nation. Islam.
So there you go. You see, your nationality is connected to your wealth. And the prophet saying he is a citizen of the United States of America, the u.s.a. When he's talking in the warning about us, being restored to the constitutional fold of government, having citizenship, etc. Things of this nature, dealing with the laws of this government. That makes us a part of it. So the land belongs to the citizens. And even if you want to go deeper on the degree dealing with, the Timothy and Richardson dingle-el degrees going into the policy and the laws of Abraham Lincoln, we're supposed to be a accommodated land. We're supposed to be colonized somewhere between the Allegheny and the Rocky Mountains, or anywhere along the 3630 parallel latitude lines across the planet with the consent of governments in those lands. These are laws that was passed along with our freedom. And so land is a part of our birthright as citizens of the United States of America, and through what is owed to us through slavery, through the laws that was passed during the end of slavery, or the end of the era of slavery, as the prophet refers to it, culminating in the year 1865, and in the era of slavery. But there are some laws in and around that time frame that still pertain to our birthright. Islam. So who got a problem with that? Where's the conspiracy to destroy the Moorish movement in the meaning of the term? He's saying we part of the government, which is what he's saying in the divine constitution and bylaws, which he's saying in the divine warning. So the word part, there's no discrepancy there, so I'm not going to try to make like it's a discrepancy. And so that's plus parcel, land, boundaries, territory, things of that nature that pertain to us having wealth. Who got a problem with that? All right, well, maybe the conspirators then is not the partial Moors. The conspirators must be the partial Moors. So let's look at what the word partial means in law, and let's see if there's a problem with that.
Islam. Partial. Relating, again, out the Backlog Dictionary, 4th edition, partial, relating to or constituting a part, not complete, not entire or universal, not general or total. Islam?
Islam simple. The Asiatics here in America, the Moorish, the members of the Moorish Temple of America, the people that are so-called 40 million so-called blacks, they only constitute a part of the people. And when you're a true citizen, you're not everybody. You don't make up the entire citizenry as a Moorish American. Obviously, we know that there were Europeans that took part in the founding, in the origin of the government. All right, but Moors also took part in that. This was a government that had Moors in the inception of the government, as well as Europeans. I'm not gonna argue that Moors were the majority within that government. Moors also had governments fighting against the United States of America. people of our bloodline here in America who had pre-existing ancient governments that were fighting, you know, this government formed with Moors as well as colonists. Islam. So then there's the era of slavery. Our people, whatever side they was on, at some point were affected adversely, branded with Negro, black, and colored. The era of slavery ends before the Prophet Noble Drew Ali is born in 1865. That's the Civil War era. That's during the administration of President Abraham Lincoln in the year he's assassinated. So when we go into these degrees, we giving you a greater depth of understanding of the history surrounding of what the Prophet must have known. Clearly, he's right. If you Google today, if you Google the omnipotent demigod of the millennials and generation after that knows all, it's going to tell you that slavery ended in 1865 in America. But see, these master Moors was before Google. These master Moors was before the internet with their great wisdom and knowledge, including the likes of Grand Sheiks Timothy and Grand Sheik Richardson dingle-el. They had to go to libraries to get this information. They had to read books where you could just Google and see if what I'm saying is right. Islam. So whether you saying parcel, as in land, territory, you know, so we having part and parcel. We part of the government, part of the land, or we part of the government. We don't constitute the whole government. We only part of it. And there's other aspects in play. Well, obviously we only part of it. That's why we're subject to the Constitution of the United States of America. That's why the Prophet put in the divine Constitution and bylaws, laws telling us to obey the laws of the said government, the government of the United States of America, because by being a citizen, we are part of it. So who's arguing against partial? Are you arguing the Moors are the whole part of the government? Or are you arguing against the Prophet in the divine warning, all the evidence that he shows that we are part of the United States of America, and that was the intent of the Moorish movement, to be a part of the United States of America by having our own thing, our own government within a government to govern ourselves. Islam? So some of the greatest controversies in the Moorish movement, not only do we have credible answers, but we can show you how we came to these conclusions. So the argument to us, it don't even matter. You say it says parcel, okay. All right, maybe you might be right. So it don't make no difference to me. If you say it says partial, okay, you might be right. It don't make no difference to me. Either way, though, both phrases don't take away from our birthrights. And both phrases essentially convey the same idea, meaning, and principle. And Morris, this is you can disagree, and we can build on a disagreement if you disagree. But I open the floor, but I don't want awkward silences. But I don't want to seem like you can't have a different opinion or view here, because that's more than welcome. We build on the science, and we can disagree in Islam and love each other at the end of the day, and still, come to a conclusion based on the evidence that's presented before us. All right, so we tying these things in together. These are coherent positions that we have, and if you have a coherent argument, the floor is open, to present that. And this is a public meeting. Anybody who's here, whoever disagree with us on anything, I'm always welcome to come on our forum and voice that disagreement. Because at the end of the day, Moors think by just stop debating, that's going to solve all the problems. Nah, show and prove your position so that the people know the truth from the falsehood, and then we go there. We go with whichever way we need to go based on being informed and being able to come to a conclusion. Maybe not everybody, but the majority of people going to follow truth if only they can see it. And so this is where debates are healthy. But at the end of the day, our objective is to present these arguments that Moors are having, and just what our understanding is, and hopefully I can alleviate some of the confusion and disagreements that are taking place among Moors, because they having these arguments, but they're not really addressing them. Islam?
Islam.
Islam, Sheik.
Islam, brother Jeff. I'm sorry, I didn't even see that. You go ahead, Jeff. You good? And so those were the two arguments right there that Sheikh Sadiq feels the biggest controversy. Now I want to open the floor for more. Do you feel any other arguments? If not the most, if you agree with the Sheikh and you think his arguments are the biggest ones, what do you think is also noteworthy? Or if you feel that there's an argument even bigger than that in the Moorish movement, I like to kind of start discussing Islam. Y'all know I got
Islam.
y'all know I got one.
Islam.
Yeah, Islam. I just want y'all to participate. Islam, Sheikh.
As far as government going, the understanding to the supremacy clause, Article 6 of the United States Constitution, because as you know more, the treaties is supreme law of the land too more, and the treaties is how we effectuate our birthright, and that argument.
Islam, and it should be a lot of other more, charming in with this because this is a good topic that he got, so it shouldn't be silence. So after this, which is on the floor
Yo,
right
Grand
now,
Sheikh, you breaking up? Is he breaking up to anybody else? Because he's cutting up for me.
Nah, he coming in good. I think it's on your end, Co-Chairman.
Okay,
Chairman.
maybe it's on mine. I'm sorry to interrupt.
I was saying, after this, what Muhammad put on the floor, y'all more need to start thinking about some questions. Like he said, there's no wrong answer to these things. We putting this on the floor so it could be cleared up because there's a lot of different controversies within the Moorish movement. So everybody should have something on their mind. With that, say peace.
Islam, peace. And to add on to what the Grand Sheikh is saying, I know that Moorish science could be overwhelming. I know we deal with a lot of advanced information. I know Moors, for whatever set of reasons, don't find a lot of time to study. This is a freebie Sunday to get some participation points, if you will, to contribute in some way to the minds of the Moors. We put these videos up on YouTube, and Moors are engaged. They be a part of this Moorish history. And these are opportunities to kind of get your voice heard and show that you here, you present. Islam, and this is, like I said, it's a free Sunday. Moors debate on I don't know how much types of disagreements that Moors are having. So, Islam. To get back to Sheikh Muhammad, he gave a good one. I might phrase it a little different to emphasize a part of what he was saying. But just could you bring that back to the floor one more time, Sheikh?
Islam. Well, as we understand here, that the United States Constitution is the supreme law of the land. But there's a supremacy clause within Article 6 where it talks about upholding prior engagements or prior treaties to the signing of this law in continuity with the Declaration of Independence and other federal laws. And Moors like to take this word, upscrew the definition of the word, and try to base themselves as a super citizen or a national or have diplomatic immunity based to the ill understandings of a word being used in that article. Islam.
So I'm going to articulate it a little differently. But he brings up a very, very major argument in the Moorish movement. So I'm going to make the emphasis not on the supremacy clause in the Constitution, but on the right of Moors to navigate under the treaty or treaties in some cases, as opposed to the Moorish Science Temple of America to exercise their birthright as Moors, or some of them refer to themselves still as Moorish Americans. And so we have a response to this particular argument too. And that's this. When we analyze the historical record, you can't look at a linear way that Moors do. Moors will look at the 1700s period, and they'll look at important figures during that time and some important events during that time, and they'll look at earlier periods from 711 AD to the 1700s. And that's what Moors, all they wanted to talk about. But what about the era of slavery, and what were the conditions of the people, and where were we in this period of time? Excuse me. Because we are currently in the 2000s, and you stopped your Moorish teaching in the 1700s. And your only rationale is, well, Negro, black, and colored is a false brand, and we really Moors, and so, you know, what the European did don't matter during that time. Now that we know who we are and we awoke, we claiming our birthright. And that's the position that many Moors hold. But see, they negate reality because they negate historical events that transpired afterward. So you had, quote unquote, indigenous Moors, tribal Moors in the Americas, like the Iroquois, members of the Iroquois Confederation, i.e., you have the Lenni Lenape, you know, groups that specifically refer to themselves as Moors, in the Americas, you know, the Washita and others, prior to the arrival of colonists. Then you had Moriscos, who later no longer are referred to as Moors, but just referred to as Negro, black, and colored. Then you have Moors who were referred to as Moors and knew who they were, but they were from the continent of Africa. The majority of them, vast majority. And so they never had their nationality taken away from them, thus they already knew they were Moors, and they already knew that the treaty applied to them. So one of the cases that Moors cite is the Free Sundry Moors Act of 1790. And to give a brief synopsis of the case, essentially, it was a prince and several others who were abducted into captivity. While on the ship, they made it be known of their status and their protections as such, you know, with the captors that they were, you know, sold to. Essentially, it was an enemy tribe that captured them or whatever. Enemy tribe that captured them, and they were sold to Europeans. The European told them that they were gonna, you know, basically set them free. They're gonna bring them to England, set them free or whatever because of treaty relations or what have you. But they were lied to, and they were brought to Virginia and enslaved, which was against, you know, against the international law and against Act 6. Not Act 6. I'm sorry. My apologies. Article 6 of the Constitution. And so when they were brought here to Virginia, they applied to the state courts. I believe it was in South Carolina it wound up. That it went to the South Carolina highest courts, Supreme Court of South Carolina or something like that. And in that case, they won their freedom for themselves and their wives on the basis of a treaty of peace and friendship. And because the United States of America had treaty relations with Morocco, they had to abide by those treaty relations and set them free once their status and everything was revealed to the courts and how they wound up in bondage. And so Moors would cite that case. But that would negate, by using it today, would negate two things. A, that they weren't born over here. They were born on the continent of Africa. And B, during that same particular time, there were Asiatics of our race who already had their birthright stripped from them and branded Negro, black, and colored. So just like you could say today, if people from the continent of Africa, they know who they are, et cetera, and they may, you know, you might call them black, but they know their nationality, and they identify themselves as such. That's the same thing was happening back then. All right, so, you know, so-called Negro, black, and colored was a brand that was placed upon many of our ancestors here. So the Treaty of Peace and Friendship did not apply to them. And we know who those people are that the Treaty of Peace and Friendship don't apply to, because they born with the names Williams, Smith, Jenkins, Jones, Jackson, etc. They born with slave names. So you have the evidence that your ancestors, at some way, shape, or form, were subjugated to these Negro laws because you bear the brand in your last name. All right? Similar to, there's a difference between the free national name versus him starting to call himself Toby. But he had a name that he previously went by, Kunta Kinte. He had a previous heritage in political affiliation prior to slavery. But one generation removed, that's wiped away. The kids don't even know the language or the affiliation or any of that nature. And so this was the whole purpose of the prophet coming, to remove those brands. Otherwise, if we was able to, and this is what more they try to pretend like you could just wipe that away. But no, there was an era of slavery. And the prophet created a process. And it's the reason why he incorporated into the government of the United States of America. Because, matter of fact, I'm gonna let the prophet explain it. I'm doing too much talking. Can we get there's but one issue from the divine constitution and bylaws? Divine warning by the prophet to the nations. The word divine got me tripped up.
Islam.
Can we get the there's but one issue?
Give me 1 second, Moses.
Because the prophet simplifies it. I'm saying all of this to say, and the prophet eloquently simplified it himself. And you can understand his methodology and why he's the way. What he accomplished and how his foundation was solidified by using the method that he used. And if these Moors outside of this method don't represent him. Let me know when you're ready, Sheik. So this particular excerpt is going to illuminate our relationship to the United States of America and why that's important. It was to gain international recognition of our free national descent name, our free national names, El, Bay, our heritage of being recognized, our race as Asiatic, our nationality as Moorish American. Being recognized in the United States of America gets us the recognition of the international community, because the United States of America is internationally recognized. Islam, if the Sheik's having trouble finding, if any other Sheik has it.
Islam, pardon, Moses. There's but one issue for them to be recognized by this government and of the earth, and it comes only
hold on, right there. Hold on. Don't speedball right there. There is but one issue. So he's saying it's not 2, it's not 20, it's not 100. There's only one issue for them to be what? For them to be recognized. So for us to be recognized as Moorish America is only one issue. Not just to be recognized here in America, but by the earth, the entire planet, to recognize us. Continue, Sheik.
Islam, and also the Camelback off of the degree earlier, it also explains that he is not speaking about our theocracy, but the national government at large. Islam.
Thank you for that tie-in. Islam.
And it comes only through the connection of the Moorish Divine National Movement, which is incorporated in this government and recognized by all other nations of the world. And through it, they and their children can receive their divine rights unmolested by other citizens, that they can cast a free national ballot at the polls under the free national constitution of the state's government, and not under a granted privilege, as has been the existing condition for many generations. Islam.
So let's take it back. I want to let you finish reading the entire excerpt first, but take it back from where you started. I'm going to be interrupting you now, breaking down every part.
Islam. So start from the top. There's but one issue.
Yeah, you can go ahead. Start from the top.
Islam. There's but one issue for them to be recognized by this government and of the earth, and it comes only through the connection of the Moorish divine national movement, which is incorporated in this government and recognized by all other nations of the world. And through it, they and their children can receive their divine rights unmolested by other citizens that can cast a free national ballot at the polls under the free national constitution of the state's government, and not under a granted privilege, as has been the existing condition for many generations. Islam?
I was supposed to interrupt you, but I have my mic muted. All right, well, I'll just go through it. So, the prophet, again, you hear him say things like, take cash on the free national ballot. What's a free national ballot? It's a vote. To be able to vote at the polls, which you weren't allowed to do for many generations, which we understand. This is a history that is well known and documented. All right? There's been many voters to this day, but going back since so-called blacks were even allowed to vote in America, there have been laws that prevented so-called blacks from voting, right? And so he's talking about the United States of America. All right, the Moorish Civil of America don't even have ballots under the prophet's original construct. The leaders are the sheiks. The sheiks were appointed. It's an appointment position. It's not, you don't, put yourself on a docket, on a ticket, and then, campaign to become a sheik. That's not how the prophet set it up. And so he cannot be talking about the Moorish Civil of America as a government that you cash for free national ballots. He talk about being recognized in this government and the nations of the earth. He talks about the incorporation being the vehicle to allow that to happen. That's why he put it on the back of the 101s. Just so you could never forget that you would never not know that he incorporated into the government if you're doing your due diligence and you study. Because if you read the 101s from cover to cover, you're gonna see that incorporation every time. And you're gonna know that he did it. Not only that, but he put in the Moorish Quran. So if you're reading the Holy Book alone, you're gonna know that he incorporated. Then he wrote separate literature to emphasize the point that he incorporated so that you would know. The incorporation was to attach what he was doing to the United States of America through a lawful process to restore all the things that was taken from us so that we would have what our divine rights unmolested by other citizens. These laws are advocating to be outside the constitutional construct. Just because there's a treaty between your government and another government, even if you accepted their argument that a treaty applies to them, which it does not. I got to go back to that. But if the treaty applied to them, if the Constitution doesn't apply to you except for the terms of the treaty. Islam, but going back to the Free Sons of Moors Act, going back to the treaty. So that the historical example that the Moors provide came from somebody who wasn't born here, so therefore wasn't subject to the laws that govern so-called Negroes, black and colored at the time, like the Christian black codes and things of that nature. He was born from another land, and he was born directly under the government with all the rights, obviously being a prince of the Kingdom of Morocco, which we didn't have those rights here in America because we were already subject to slavery. Slavery wasn't unlawful in Morocco, it wasn't unlawful in America, and it wasn't unlawful in many places until the modern world. And so the fact that you was brown skinned and enslaved don't mean the Moroccans cared anything about you. And the evidence is that this whole history that we coming to find out and nobody came and saved us? Or what if you was an indigenous Moor, et cetera, you knew who you was? Well, it wasn't referencing any tribes. And if they knew about this treaty and they were using it, where's the case law? None of the Native American tribes used this treaty to exercise any birthright. They were using other treaties from their specific tribe with the United States of America, and many of them were violated those particular treaties. But the longest standing treaty in the history of the world is a treaty of peace and friendship that was between the Moors of Morocco and America. But to further illustrate the point, let's go to chapter 47 of the Moors Quran, last two verses.
It's long.
It's long.
Through sin, you said 47? Excuse me. You said chapter 47?
Yes, it's long. It's long, yes.
It's long. Through sin and disobedience, every nation has suffered slavery due to the fact that they honor not the creed and principles of their forefathers. This is why
it's long. Well, I want to stop you. Oh, wait. I want to just address that part right there.
It's long.
That every nation has suffered slavery. So the fact that we was enslaved is not a significant point, because even Europeans were enslaved. We can go into the whole degree of slave coming from the word Slav. Many more so this that's the Eastern European, pale skinned people of where the word slave comes from is based on them and their known history of being in bondage and forced servitude. Okay, but we don't even got to go there, right? Every nation suffers slavery. So when you look at any group of people, at some point in history, they were forced into bondage under another people. So that's not the issue. Let's continue.
Islam, before I continue reading this next verse, we have a brother trying to join the meeting, brother Jason F.
Yeah, I just let him in. It's long. I see the text.
Islam.
Matter of fact, before you begin, Jeff, can I pass you the leader of, not the leader, but the admin for this? Because it's hard for me to demonstrate and see when people coming in trying to get in. And I don't want more.
Islam, Sheikh, yes. You can do that.
I'm going to pass you the host. Islam, Sheikh, you can continue. I'm sorry.
Islam. Instruction 17, chapter 47, Moors Holy Quran. That is why the nationality of the Moors was taken away from them in 1774, and the word Negro, black, and colored was given to the Asiatics of America who were of Moorish descent, because they honored not the principles of their mother and father, and strayed after the gods of Europe, of whom they knew nothing. Islam?
Islam. So I don't want to focus on the why. I want to focus on the what. That's what the prophet is saying. The what that I'm talking about is that the nationality of the Moors was taken away in 1774. So not only did he tell us that our nationality was taken, i.e., we had it and now we no longer have our nationality, but he tells us when it was taken. 1774. Okay? Now I want to address two things that are relevant to this. The first point is in Acts 6. The prophet says the era of slavery is from 1779 to 1865. Right? But he says our nationality was taken away in 1774. So let me explain what is the significance of these two dates. The Moorish nation in America fell in 1774. That's when the Europeans had defeated us. But they were still separate colonies at this time. Or it's not even colonies, but colonists, waves of Europeans that were coming in since the pilgrims and all these other people, that came in different waves. You know what I mean? Mayflower Compact and all that. That was in the centuries earlier, right? So the point is this: In 1774, they were finally able to defeat us. And in between that time, in 1779, is when they were able to establish themselves as a government in a nation. Okay? They were able to mobilize themselves, come to an agreement, a social contract between them, that they will form a government in 1779. And that's when those brands were able to take effect. Because now, as a government, they had the capacity to label the property of the people and have it internationally recognized. Okay? So that's a very, very relevant piece of information. So we already fell in 1774. So even though you have instances of Moorish rebellion, even up into the 1800s, excuse me, maybe even the early 1900s in America and globally, we were already a fallen and defeated nation. The rise of the European had already begun. Okay? That's a long time between 1492 and 1774. And he was able to develop himself a stronghold and a footing on this land that only grew over that time. So that's the what that the prophet's talking about. So question, if we fell in 1774, if they rose to what became the foundation of their dominance in 1779, and they had a whole era of slavery that didn't end until the Civil War, how are you how does the treaty pertain to you when it's in between that time frame? 1774, 1779, 1790. The Moors are already defeated here. These brands are already imposed upon the record. The era of slavery has already begun at the time of 1790. So was there Moors who had their heritage and preserved their Moors? Maybe. You might find some weird anomaly somewhere that lasted up until, but the vast majority of people that were enslaved were already had their Christian names branded. Europeans was already wilding on us in terms of our complexion and our racial designation. Already discriminated against. They already placed in the law that only a white man can be a citizen, and they classify us as black and Negro in color with these brands. So the treaty wasn't talking about us. It wasn't talking about indigenous tribes that may have seen themselves as sovereign outside of the powers of the Sultan of Morocco. From our research, it seems that it was unbeknownst to native tribes here, the treaty, and the Sultan's authority claims over here to the majority of the people. Some of them knew to identify themselves as Moors and didn't even know about the Sultan and the authority because they were governing themselves, and whenever they got into controversies with the government, they didn't use the treaty. That's the evidence they didn't know. All right? So here's another case, the m.s.t.a case, that also has to do with treaty relations. Asiatics, enslaved and them winning their freedom in the United States courts through treaty relations. But yet still, they still had an era of slavery here. So Moors try to ignore that history. So the way that the prophet was able to surmount that was to him as a sovereign authority, as a prophet, but also utilizing the laws of the United States of America that were conducive to his aims of restoring our divine creed, our nationality. He utilized her divine statute, but not that being an authority of his claim. His authority is a divine claim, but he utilized the laws of this government to erect the Moorish Temple of America, which itself is a government. So those Moors may also try to tell you that the temple, it's just for religion. It's just for religion. It's just for religion. No, the religion and the government are in tandem. What are you talking about, religion and government in tandem? You have examples of that today. Iran is a religious government in tandem, a government in itself. But it's divine law, and its governmental law is based off its divine law. Same thing. That's a theocracy. That's a form of government. And so the prophet, by needing to restore Islamism, he needed to give us more than just, all right, well, you're not a Negro no more, you're Moorish American, you're not an LFA. He had to give us our way of life, our divine creed, so that we would have a moral compass and that we would be in line with Allah, with the divine creator, as well as being able to create laws and prosperity for ourselves. All the while attaching us to our ancestral land with the government that already has recognition here. So if you want to form your own thing and say you are more because your man descent nature don't change, that's true. You could do that. But the prophet's foundation is the most solid one. And if you feel your foundation is more solid than the Moorish-style Temple of America, which was founded by the Prophet u.s.a. for the upliftment of fallen humanity and the salvation of our people and the citizens, if what you got that's outside of what the Prophet founded is better, then stop using the Prophet's name as our only gripe. Because he said there's one issue, and he said it comes only. There's no exceptions then, according to the Prophet u.s.a. He said it comes only through the Moorish Divine and National Movement, which is incorporated into this government. The movement he's talking about is incorporated is the Moorish-style Temple of America. So to be clear, according to what the Prophet, who is a founder of the Moorish Divine National Movement, if you are a part of it, then you are a member by Act 6. You are a member of the Moorish-style Temple of America. There is no Moorish Divine National Movement outside of the Moorish-style Temple of America, not according to Sheikh m.s.t.a, not according to Grand Sheikh u.s.a, but according to the Prophet Noble Jew Ali. We read it to you. We read it to you. So these more they can pick and choose which of the Prophet things that they want to uphold, what they don't want to uphold. But we take the totality of the works, and we will understand on it in any discussion. So the idea that, the Article 6, get back to the Sheikh's original point, Article 6 of the treaty. The treaty didn't apply to indigenous people because they didn't know about it. And if we're wrong, we challenge anyone to present case law of so-called Native Americans using the Treaty of Peace and Friendship or any other treaties, Treaty of Tripoli or anything of that nature, to outside of treaties of their own specific tribe. We challenge anyone to produce it. Secondly, it didn't apply to many of our people here that have Negro, slave names today that was born with William Jenkins, Jones, Jackson, and Smith. We know this because the era of slavery is a historical fact. And the Prophet tells us, according to his own works, the one who turned the light on, let us know he was Moorish American. He said that the era of slavery was from 1779 to 1865, but the Treaty of Peace and Friendship was 1790 and later. The Barbary treaties were in the 1790s and later. After a full 12 years after the establishment of the era of slavery. See that movie 12 Years a Slave? Many of our people were already 12 years a slave before the treaty was signed by Sultan Muhammad ibn Abdullah. All right? You have people with the name Bay on the treaty. Where's Mr. Williams at on the treaty? Where's Mr. Jenkins at on the treaty? Where's Mr. Smith, Jones, Jackson on the treaty? Those names are not there. Why were you not born with Islamic names? Why were you born with Christian names? Because your ancestors strayed after the gods of Europe of whom they knew nothing. You already fell to the bondage of slavery. And that's why Allah sent us a prophet in the first place. That these Moors want to prop his name up, but then denounce his most important creation, which was the founding of the Moorish-style Temple of America. Not the restoration of some fallen empire, but the restoration of national citizenship and entry into the family of nations for our people. Islam. So we do got some more time. If You know, I think it's all cheap, Grand Sheik.
As long, one thing though, we always, demonstrate is that when most of the Moors used the Treaty of Peace and Friendship of 1787, they had to go back to Africa. They didn't stay here. I just want to put that on the Moors' minds, peace.
So, exactly. That's a major point that I you'll see back when we play it back. I mentioned that there were two things. I forgot the second one, but that was the other piece of pertinent information is that you get deported, generally speaking, because they weren't citizens here. The treaty don't make you a citizen. There's nowhere in the Treaty of Peace and Friendship. There's nowhere in any of the treaties that make you a citizen. Citizenship after birth for foreigners is called naturalization. That's Article 1, Section 4, Section 8, Clause 4 of the Constitution. That's no pathway to citizenship. No treaties make you citizen. And so Moors are right to say that they're not citizens if they're going to use the treaty. But, you're in a murky area because in those instances, many of the cases, like one of the cases I cited, the Moors got deported. Right? They were sent back to Africa once they were given their freedom. Now, let me explain the case of the Free Sundry Moors Act, in case Moors want to say, well, those Moors, they weren't forced to go back or whatever. The ruling of the case was that they were to be treated under the laws of the legislature in South Carolina. One thing I want to note is that is not that's not within the federal jurisdiction. That's not an Article 3 case in terms of a Supreme Court case. That was the highest place that case reached was the state court. In the jurisdiction, I believe it was the jurisdiction of South Carolina. Okay? So they didn't have national citizenship. That case didn't necessarily, of course, full faith and credit, they can utilize that case when they travel to other places. But that case didn't grant it on a national level. It was just a case law that could be utilized in an example in American history. Okay, so, they were treated under the laws as such in that particular instance. But that's not the South Carolina state legislature as well as the South Carolina judiciary is not the end all be all in terms of, how nationality is understood, on a federal or national level. But it was one of those rare instances where people didn't get deported or sent back home. So, does anybody else want to add on or ask any questions pertaining to demo? All right, so we ain't gonna waste no time because we don't got much time to waste. Is there any more controversies that Moors can think of?
Islam Moors, a lot of you Moors on this call been in the movement for what long time, so make your knowledge born, please. Engage in the conversation, peace.
I mean, the Grand Sheik and I, we've discussed in the past, why Moors are so reluctant to participate in our discussions. I know we have a very high standard, and I know that we give out a lot of information that you just ain't gonna walk up on the street knowing. So it requires you to do a lot of reading to really be able to add on. But in this particular discussion, this is something that you can literally ask any random Moor and they can think of something, because we've all heard Moors and we all Facebook, we all see Moors debate about this. But there's a reluctance for some reason or another. We try to encourage Moors to participate because this is how you elevate and grow. This is how you strengthen your relationship and a brotherhood that's based upon, you know, principles, teachings, understandings. And this is how you demonstrate and show that you understand, you know, what's being conveyed. You know, part of your contribution to the Moorish movement would be in these classes, especially if you know you've been in this more than once. It take you 4 years to get a college degree. And I know some of us on this call right now have been a part of this temple more than 4 years. And have come to numerous meetings, you know, great stellar attendance, you know. So it's just a conundrum why, you know, more Moors don't speak. But I'm gonna throw one out there because I like fluidity in discussion. So I'm gonna just throw one out here. I don't think it may be the greatest.
Islam.
Oh, Islam, Mo.
Islam. Praise our honor to his holy prophet and honor to everything that chairman gave honor to in opening the meeting. I'd like to ask about the treaty, the friendship, the treaty between Morocco and America. And you were saying that brothers tried to use that. In what aspect? Because the treaty was established with a sovereign nation. Them brothers is not a part of that particular country.
Islam. That's a great question. That's a great question. Just give me 1 second. I'm just gonna take a sip of this water. We'll be hydrated. Yeah. So great question. Great question from Brother Outlaw Bay, who's an elder in the Moorish movement. Been around more than some of us had years on this earth, you know, in terms of the prophet's teachings. So I definitely love that the elder posed the question to the floor. And it's because of the understanding. So can we get the man descent nature verse in the Moorish Quran? Because this is a particular verse that Moors like to cite. It's in chapter 47. They like to cite this to negate the era of slavery.
Islam.
Islam, Mo.
Oh, Islam. Chapter 47, verse 9. According to all true and divine records of the human race, there is no Negro, Black, or colored race attached to the human family, because all the inhabitants of Africa were and are of the human race, descendants of the ancient Canaanite nation from the Holy Land of Canaan.
Islam. So thank you for that, Sheikh. So that particular verse, they utilize that verse as their rationale for saying, well, you know, the European essentially can't legislate us because man and sin and nature don't change. Even if we was enslaved, we was still Moors then. And you're absolutely right. You are 100% correct. But you cannot pick and choose. So you choose that verse to substantiate your argument, but in the same breath, you don't want to address the other verse that we already read, which says that in Act 6, which essentially says that we were enslaved and that our nationality was taken away and that we were branded Negro, Black, and colored. What about those parts that the prophet said? So is he contradicting himself? No, he's saying that this is why he's able to do what he's able to do in terms of creating the u.s.a. Temple of America and restoring our nationality, because man and sin and nature doesn't change. So we are who our forefathers were, and he created an affidavit. That affidavit is a statement of fact. And so when he incorporated into this government with these records, it made this position, the government had X amount of years to refute him. But the reason why they could never refute him is because the First Amendment, they can't make no law abridging religion. So that's why the religious movement and why the religious part is so powerful in America. I don't even want to get off on a tangent like that. The point is that our nationality was taken away, the Moorish Empire fell, the Kingdom of Morocco and those that descend from the heirs of the dynasty in which that you want to utilize these treaties from have no relations with our people. Well, they themselves say we Negro, black, and colored. And so that construct we were artificially disconnected from in terms of our nationality being taken away from us, while our descendant nature remained the same. And so all the prophet had to do was restore our connection to the family and nations and remove the vestiges of Negro, black, and colored attachment to us. To return the European and all that which he gave us during slavery and restore us back to the path by which Allah had us on prior to our fall. You see? So essentially to make knowledge born, their point is the verse that Sheikh Sadiq read, that they was always Moors and they always be Moors, and there's nothing the European could have did to stop making them Moors. But then there's the other aspect of the era of slavery and the prophet's idea to the solution of the Negro problem, which is the Moorish Science Temple of America, which is the Moors returning back to the mind state of their ancestors or becoming true citizens of the United States of America and getting their nationality and their identity and their political rights unmolested by other citizens through the recognition created by the prophet in 1928 by establishing the Moorish Science Temple of America. Islam? So they'll take that aspect of the prophet to legitimize what they're saying, but they don't take the prophet completely. Whatever don't fit their agenda, they'll push that to the side just so their argument sounds the strongest. And they'll strengthen their argument using the prophet's name. And if you're not careful, if you're not listening, if you're not studying, you may just take that argument with that verse. Well, the prophet did say that, but what about what the prophet said this? Is he contradicting himself? Or is there something that this person is leaving out? And clearly, we illustrate it today that they're leaving out messages. I want to stay focused because the more we get closer to that time, the more I want to focus in. Islam, so does that answer your question, Brother Outlaw? Do you have any follow-up on that? Islam, you got to unmute your mic if you're trying to speak. Well, I'm going to just assume that satisfies the Muslim's question. Beloved elder, as I said, one of the most faithful boys I know, very pure heart. Islam, I appreciate that, Muslim, very much. So that kind of, again, that's a valid question because it comes out of the discussion, and to kind of bring more crystallization to our position on these disagreements between the boys. So I'll give about 5 seconds if any boys want to throw one in before I chime in with it, and I just go.
Islam. To look at the Moorish movement from an outsider's point of view in, did the prophet plagiarize other works when it comes to the Circle 7 Quran? How is that an authentic holy book?
Islam, that's actually a great angle, and I appreciate you for that, Sheikh. Coming from a great angle because there are arguments made, and it was insufficiently defended many years ago in a very controversial debate. But the brother, he gave wonderful information, but that specific argument was something that in the Black Power conscious community was championed against Moors until we had to have a resurgence and let them know the light is with us. But that argument was originally produced by Cyrus m.s.t.a, and he argued that the Moorish Quran was plagiarized based on the fact that prior to the prophet publishing the pamphlet, what we call the Circle 7 Quran or the Holy Quran of the Moorish Holy Temple of Science or the Moorish Science Temple of America,
that particular pamphlet has writings that pre-exist the writings of the Prophet Muhammad. And so the first portion that we can find literature that almost matches verbatim to what the Prophet wrote is a book by a writer by the name of Levi Dowling. Now, Levi Dowling was obviously into some type of occultism. He claimed that his work, which is, I believe, entitled The Aquarian Gospel of Jesus Christ, is almost an identical match to the earlier chapters of the Moorish Quran. And he claimed that he didn't originate it. It wasn't original work. He didn't claim that it was original work by himself, even though he's the first to publish it in America. He claimed that he got it from what is known as the Akashic record, which is basically saying, I got it from the ethers, right? And there's some divine, supernatural record or recordation of all things that to exist and will come to exist or whatever are recorded on the Akashic record, and through some type of supreme mastery of meditation, you could reach this realm where you could get this information that's not documented anywhere else in the physical world. My synopsis on screen. Okay, but firstly, and then there's also the work Unto Thee I Grave that has some excerpts in the Moorish Quran. So there are some aspects of the Moorish Quran that are not original of the Prophet. But what you must do is first you must look at the cover of the Moorish Quran. The cover of the Moorish Quran does not say written by, and it never says that the Prophet claims to be the author of this particular work. It says the phrase, divinely prepared by Prophet u.s.a. Divinely prepared. So he's not claiming that he wrote everything. He's saying that he prepared it. He put it together. He made it into this one work that you would call the Moorish Quran. Okay? Furthermore, you'll notice if you look at your Moorish Quran that there are quotations. So there are parts of the Moorish Quran that are the Prophet himself speaking, and then there are parts of the Moorish Quran that are from another work. Now, the work doesn't originate with Levi Dowling. We come to know this because there are other writings that talk about some of the things like Jesus travels to India, etc., that were translated by basically in monasteries, like in Tibet, places like that. There was one Russian writer in the 1800s, I forget his name, who has said that he went to this monastery, this Tibetan monastery, and translated the works that talked about the travels of Jesus outside of the narrative of 18 years of Jesus, outside of the narrative of the original Christian Bible or any version of it. They all don't have those 18 years in the writings, but he claims that there are these original writings. Well, the Prophet also gives credit. Islam, I'm going to give it to you right now. The Prophet also gives credit on page 3 of the Moorish Quran as to where he got the 18 missing years of Jesus Christ. He does never claim that those original works, that he's the one that wrote it. He tells us exactly where he claims to have gotten them from, which is the same place that this particular Russian writer claims that he got these particular translations of the writings. And you also have on even YouTube to this day, there's a monastery that's mentioned, like Jagannath or something like that, that's mentioned in the Moorish Quran. One of the heads of that particular temple that is centuries old is on record being filmed saying that they had the 18 missing years of Jesus, but they hid it from the world because of fear of violence coming upon them, or the records trying to be destroyed, which we know is historically true of the Christian governments of the ancient world up until, relative recent history. Islam Sheikh Muhammad, you had something to say, but I also want somebody to get page 3 of Morris Quran that talks about where the Prophet got those works. Islam Sheikh, you wanted to add something?
Islam, yeah. I go through the reading, and I was just going to substantiate what you were saying about Nicholas Nokovich. That was the name of the all
All
these
right, well, you could give your measure on Nicholas Nokovich, and then you can read the excerpt.
All right, so basically he was a Russian author, and he had worked on a book called La Vie Incarnée de Jesus Christ, or Life of Saint Isa, in Nepal of Tibet, and that's where those writings came from, and that's how a lot of the works got out to the world. But there's other various works that also go along with it, but you can find that out through your own study. But that's who's being spoken of in this portion of Islam.
I'm gonna try to get them since I'm more open.
Islam, this is page 3. The lessons of this pamphlet are not for sale, but for the sake of humanity as a prophet. The servant is worthy of his hire. You can receive this pamphlet at his expense. The reason these lessons have not been known is because the Muslims of India, Egypt, and Palestine had these secrets and kept them back from the outside world. And when the time appointed by Allah, they loosened the keys and freed these secrets. And for the first time in ages, have these secrets been delivered in the hands of the Muslims of America. All authority and rights of publishing of this pamphlet in 1927 by the Prophet Noble Dryly, Islam.
Islam. So right there, the Prophet tells you that, you have to read earlier in the excerpt of that particular page where he talks about the 18 missing years of Jesus and the lesson in the kitchen house and all that, but he also gives his source. He says where it came from. And he says that the Muslims of India, what are the other two? Could you just, I don't want to, there she, the Muslims of India, what were the other two?
Islam. It's the Muslims of India, Egypt, and Palestine.
So Islam, Muslims of India, Egypt, and Palestine. I gave you a source, and also, with the Russian author Nikolai that I and a sheikh gave me the degree on. They went to India. No, Nikolai. I'm sorry, I don't want to misquote. Nikolai, I don't think went to India, but the Jantanok degree or whatever, Jagannath or whatever temple. There's a video on YouTube where a European went to interview the head of the temple in the modern day. And he claims that they have records of Jesus' travels and when Jesus came to India. And we had that in our Moorish Quran. So you have verification and validation because he said they hid them. This is the claim that he made. Islam. So getting back to the original dispute that Sarah Suda said he claimed, the claim that Sarah Suda said he made, these degrees were held back from the world because of fear of, violence. They wanted to safeguard these lessons, and then they loosened the keys. So what does it mean by loosening the keys? Does that mean that they came specifically to the Prophet Noble Ali and gave him those degrees? No, the keys being loosened as in they let foreigners translate the works. And what did the Prophet do? He delivered those lessons into the hands of the Asiatics of the West, who had those lessons in the modern world. Islam. So that's the degree on that. We giving y'all a lot. This demonstration is packed full of degrees on things that Moors disagree with. But we're not just giving you our measure and understanding. We giving you the sources so you could do further research. So you can vet the information that we're saying. And if we are wrong, you can come back and say, hey, Sheikh, you said this is true. This ain't true. This is my source proving you're wrong. And we are humble men. Because a wise man doubteth often. But we put our information out there publicly so that we can vet it. If we're not right and exact, we will come publicly and say we're not right and exact on something. And that's something that a lot of people can't say. Islam. So we not only are we telling you our measure, we giving you what we got, our understanding. And you're at an advantage because you can take that, do the knowledge, and build on that, and come to a greater understanding that we manifesting right now. Islam. So I wanna open the floor now for anybody else that may have any more questions pertaining to disputes about Moorish science in general. We don't even limit it to disputes among members in the Moorish Science of America, but just anything debated surrounding the Prophet of the Moorish Science of America, etc.
Islam.
Islam, Sheikh. AGS on the line. Islam.
Islam, this is Assistant Grand Sheikh T. Sadat Rael. All praises due to our Prophet Noble Drew Ali. All praise due to our past Grand Sheikhs, Richard Dingle-el, Timothy Dingle-el, and all the past, members in the movement, all the members on the lines, guests, so on and so forth. Islam. Yeah, with the topic that was just given, that we were just speaking about, I just wanted to add on that there's another piece of literature called Unto Thee I Grant, which comes out of the Rosicrucian order. So a large portion of the Circle 7 Quran, the same information you will find in Unto Thee I Grant. And I have, one of the, I have a hard copy from the early 1900s. And when you open it up in the beginning, they actually have pictures of the Tibetan monks holding the sacred scrolls of that information. And when you read it, they say the information comes from Akhenaten. So again, as Moors, we deal with the Akhenaten degree, the priesthood of Melchizedek, and a lot of that information, they reference it, that it was held again by those Muslims of India, held by those Tibetan monks, and again, the Muslims of Egypt, and that a lot of those works again comes from Akhenaten. And with that, I'm gonna say peace.
Islam, that's a wonderful addition there, because that's two of the three nations right there that we giving you evidence that had these particular records. I'm so praise the Lord that we have this Sister Grand Sheikh on to add his measure. And see, this is what it's all about. You know what I'm saying? It's not about listening to one more talk, because we all got finite understanding. But when the more minds that we are able to combine, the closer to Allah we can reach in terms of our understanding, because Allah is within all of us. And through our collective wisdom can be applied some of that wisdom that Allah bestowed upon mankind. Not mankind, but man. And through mankind. That's all. So we still got a little bit more time, so I want to open the floor for more controversies in the Moorish movement, because this is pretty much what the theme is of the meeting. What are things that are debated about in the Moorish movement, outside of the Moorish movement, but about the Moorish movement? Arguments that you've heard over and over again that you may want clarity to, or you may want Moors to have clarity on, or you just want to hear our particular perspective on the measure, or you just want to chime in, however you want to do it. But, I want to open the floor before I chime in. Islam. So I'm gonna throw one out there. So there's a discrepancy. Some Moors say, essentially, the Prophet was wrong. They don't say that the Prophet was wrong, but they insinuate that we shouldn't call ourselves Moorish American. And the reason or rationale they provide as to why we should call ourselves Moorish American is this. They say the suffix ish is like you like something, but you're not actually that. So let me see if I can think of an example. Actually, let me pull up the definition of ish, because we'll resolve it will answer their response in what they utilize. So So ish suffix meaning. All right, let's see what we got here. We'll go to dictionary.com. Okay. So they basically, let me see if I can find the ish that they use. Because you got to kind of reach to get this ish. Hold on 1 second. Let me see if I can find ish.
Yeah, they say like something like bluish or pinkish.
Kind of, the ish meaning kind of like.
I got it. All right, this is from the Merriam-Webster's dictionary. Adjective suffix, collegiate definition of, relating to, or being chiefly in adjectives indicating nationality or ethnic group. Finnish, boyish, bookish, qualmish, purplish,
so
having
hold
a
that
touch
right there.
or
Hold that right
trace
there.
of.
Hold on right there. That is the meaning and intent behind more-ish, is denoting national descent. So they say ish is like something, but when you look up the meaning, the chief meaning, especially when it pertains to identity, like British, Scottish, it don't mean like you like a Scot or you're kind of like you're almost like kind of like a Brit. It means you belong to, you're part of, you descend from, in relevance to nationality. Do you have the version sheet of the other version?
Which other version?
No, I got it. I got it. Actually, I got it right here.
All right.
So
Also,
they use
I wanted to add on. This definition that they use is actually the third definition in the subsection A. So it's nowhere within how it's colloquially used, collegiately used, or professionally used. This is more like of a old way of understanding the word, not pertaining to the subject matter at hand. So
it's long. So I'm gonna read the version that they use. It's an adverb and it's informal. All right, important adverb, but a very important phrase. Informal. Moorish American. That's formal. That's not an informal thing. This is your national identity, who you are. That's not informal. Okay? I'm on dictionary.com, by the way. So you heard what I put in the search engine, and I'm on dictionary.com. It may be like the third link or something like that. It said, or maybe it's the first, I don't know. It's one of the links on adverb informal. 1. Used to modify or moderate something previously stated, or as a vague reply to a question. Somewhat, in a way, not exactly. Here's the example they give. It's a decent-ish place to work. It's kind of a good place to work. Not exactly, but in a way. They say somewhat, just somewhat a good place to work. If you want to use substitute that word to replace that suffix, decent-ish, it's somewhat decent place to work. That's what that means. Are you tired? Yeah, I'm tired-ish. I'm somewhat tired. In a way, I'm tired, not exactly. But they flip it and try to apply and say that more-ish is somewhat. In a way, not exactly. No, that's not how it's used in the English language, sir or ma'am. Muslim, Muslima. That's not how it goes. Okay? So the primary version is the version that the Sheikh used, the formal version with reference to an identity of a people. Belonging to. A British person is a person who descends from the Brits, belongs to the British nation. Ergo, they're British. So you see, Moors, there's a lot of controversies, but if you actually delve into it, research the subject matter, it can alleviate a lot of the confusion. But the Moors that it's not going to help with are the ones that are governed by emotions or who are dogmatic. They Sheikh told them this is the way it is. They Grand Sheikh told them this is the way that it is. And this is what they've come to know and believe to be true. And that's all that matters. So no matter what you say, They only going to be looking for arguments to negate what you're saying. They don't want to analyze the evidence that you're presenting. But our forum is not like that. You come out Sunday meetings, you can ask any question you want, relevant to more science, as long as it's respectful and not using any profane or defamatory or hatred towards anyone. We're not gonna, restrict what kind of question you ask. And I can't recall of a time somebody asked a question we didn't have answers relevant to more science. But I can promise you this: if we didn't know our answer, we would tell you we don't know. And if we give you an answer, we're going to provide you sources so that you can verify if what we're saying is true. That you can guarantee you're going to get that from the Brooklyn Moors 100% of the time. Islam? So can anybody else think of any disputes?
Islam, family.
Islam, Muslim?
Islam.
What was yours?
Islam. I am Matundu Amatel m.s.t.a, Oklahoma Consulate. Swift Angel number 151. Let me rise in perfect praise. Give all praise, honor, and glory to our Father God Allah. Our illustrious Prophet High Sharif Abdul Ali. Give honors to Act 1, our flag, ensigns, emblems, Swift Angels, multi-core, and everything that is Moorish. And also honors to the platform that you all have in regards to the discussion. Pretty much I'm not, in looking for the controversy, but I like to look at as far as the resolution part of it. And so, in the regards to the word Moorish, I like to stick to what the prophet said, in the 101s. When in the 101s, he said one of the questions was question beginning at question 12. It say, what is his nationality? Moorish American. And it's speaking about the prophet, Noble Drew Ali. And then it said, what is your nationality? Moorish American. Why are we Moorish Americans? Because we are descendants of Moroccans and born in America. Now, when you look at this word Moor, right? We got to remember that, dealing with the etymology of the word, we're going to take the M and the R. And, the M and the R, you could trace that back to its Kemetic root. And in the Kemetic root, you could deal with the M and the R being vicegerent of the land. But one of the key things in the prophet, when he said, why are we Moorish Americans? He said, because we are descendants of Moroccans and born in America. Now, when you take the historical context of what actually happened, right, the prophet is giving us an indication of what happened in the landmass and the particular people that we are tied to, right? Because when you go off into chapter 69, I don't know, y'all probably don't, have the same, Quran. I say chapter 69 because in our Moorish Holy Quran, we got all 70 chapters and not the 42 in one book. So I'm coming out of chapter 69. They say the inhabitants of Africa are the descendants of the ancient Canaanites from the land of Canaan. Old man Cush and his family are the first inhabitants of Africa who came from the land of Canaan. His father Ham and his family was second. Then came the word Ethiopia, which means demarcation, the line of the dominion of Amexem, and due to the first true and divine name of Africa, the dividing land of his father and his son. The dominion of Cush, northeast and southeast Africa, and northwest and southwest was his father's dominion in Africa. In later years, many of their brethren from Asia and the Holy Lands joined them. Now, let me read this one last ayat. The Moabites from the land of Moab, who received permission from the pharaohs of Egypt to settle and inhabit Northwest Africa, they were the founders and are the true possessors of the present Moroccan Empire with their Canaanite, Hittite, and Amorite brethren who sojourned from the land of Canaan seeking new homes. So, the controversy in this in this word Moorish, that we need to redefine that's not wise, because your Moorish heritage or your nationality is where you can retrace yourself back to. And you can retrace yourself back to your ancestral lineage, connecting you back to the Moabites, Canaan, the Amorites, and Hittites, because all of these were ancient people who were identified before the what you call it, I'm gonna say the pre-flood, or what they call, we know it as a great earthquake, but what they call the flood period. Because see, they only take us back so far, and then if you get caught up there, you would get lost. So the reason why that we are Moorish is because this is the prophet showing us what actually happened, because the Moroccans were the ones who had a hand in the slave trade. So when the prophet told us that we were Moorish, he was connecting us back to our ancient Canaanite bloodline, as well as our Moabite ancestry and heritage. Because remember, Ruth chapter 2, verse 2, Yehoshua's grandmother, well, great grandmother, was a Moabite bloodline. And so you connect that to the ancient Canaanite bloodline by Judah. Judah had children by Canaanite women. And all of these are special people during, I'm gonna say, the antediluvian period, or the period where Pangea, where everything was connected. This is the time where our ancestors, who were the first guys to inhabit a human body, a human form. This is where they were carnated at. So this Moorish connects us back to that. But if we do away with that, right, this is another slick way, of those who want to usurp, and kind of get, throw everything off, right? This is what connects us back to that. And we have historical record to prove that. But if we were to change the name, right, and not connect that ancestral lineage back to that special nation of people, pretty much you'll be, pretty much, going around the same mountain, So this ancestral bloodline, this Moorish bloodline is I'm gonna say this nationality, this identity is very much so needed, because there is where the trust was placed upon the names and the character of our ancient forefathers. See what I'm saying? So, the more the M and the R is really important, especially when you get off into the Comessian tongue and understand our bloodline and our connection to those people, because from there you will see, once you do research and you retrace, you will see that whenever the Hyksos and whenever the invaders came into Kemet, those special ones fled further east and went into India and began to practice, Islamism under the cloak of your different religions like Buddhism or Hinduism. All of these are part of our science. It's not separate, because it's all one. In fact, its roots can be traced back to our Comessian ancestry. You see what I'm saying? So these is why these is important, and we shouldn't deviate from them, because from here is where the trust is placed upon. And also we have a historical record of where we come from, our deeds, how we were, how we civilized Rome, Spain, all of that. You see what I'm saying? So, I think that, even though this ain't my platform, I'm thinking, along the lines of resolution, and the solution to the problem is understanding our heritage, our ancestry, so that whenever we do stand up, we'll be able to properly defend the name Moorish and not go with the popular opinion, because we know in our Moorish Holy Quran, it said the mere opinions of man do not alter the nature of truth. You know what I'm saying? So these are important. That's just my measure. Peace and love, family. Gratitude for allowing me to share my measure. Islam.
My brother, what's your name, brother? I'm sorry, I didn't catch your name at the beginning.
Atum, but I go by Swift Angel number 151.
You go by, brother, your name is Atum, but you go by Swift Angel 151. Okay, so I'm gonna respect you and just go by what you prefer to be called by, which is Swift Angel. Yeah. I'm sorry, you muted. I can't hear you.
Swift.
Okay, Swift Angel. I see your mouth. I can't really hear you. Hold on a second. Let me see if I can get my sound. Are you muted, brother, or is it my sound? Can somebody else confirm? Because I can't hear it.
Nah, I was saying you can just call me that right there. What you see on the screen, that way to make it easy.
Okay. It's long. So, brother Swift Angel. I want to say about this, brother. You could from the moment he started talking, from when he came up on the camera, the way he carried himself, you could see, you know, Morris regalia in the background. You could already tell immediately that this Muslim is very serious about the Prophet. He's very serious about the Moorish Divine National Movement. You know, we Moors here in our temple, we advocate beards. So he has a strong, masculine, Hebrew, Islamic, Muslim look. You know what I'm saying? So I just want to give honor to the brother because he gave a deep measure in a very similar way that we teach, where we compile sources. You know what I'm saying? We do a comparison to various different texts that the Prophet wrote. We extend our knowledge outside of the Prophet's teaching, but utilizing the Prophet's teaching as a foundation. So I just want to give the honors and much gratitude and the roses to this brother who come on our platform. You know, I asked him, it's a number of brothers, sisters in here, or sisters, whoever, we have people in here that, you know, are affiliated with the Moorish movement. But this brother came right on camera and he gave a really, really solid measure in a deeper understanding where you could tell he ain't just hear what we said and just phrase it his own way. He had his own study, his own measure, and his own knowledge and understanding. And I just want to appreciate the brother and thank him for, you know, of sharing his knowledge, his studies, and his information. And I can tell what place that it's coming from. I'll be honest, I was a little blown back by the 69 chapters, only because I never heard it before. But, you know, we as Moors in our particular body, we don't jump on people who have a different measure of demonstration. We just ask. We don't really have understanding of that. So could you explain a little more for us for the edification of the people, you know, the 69 chapters, just to give a brief understanding? Most Moorish Qurans, up until today, I've known have 48 chapters. But the brother's illuminating that the Moorish Quran that he's building from is 69 chapters. Even the verses that he quoted, the words that he was reading, I know them in chapter 47. So I want to provide the brother, because again, you know, you will have people who will hear this later, and I want to speak for them people so they don't jump on the brother when they see the video later and try to make a controversy out of that. The whole point of addressing controversy is to come to a resolution. That's why you build on the science. So I want to give the brother the floor now so he can provide his measurements. So I also want to put out there, we have to close the meeting at 3 o'clock. There's a little more energy that we need to disperse before we go on our way, whatever I want to give a little minutes. So brother could fully articulate his measurement. Islam, Brother Swift Adrian, you have the floor.
Islam, gratitude. Well, honest previously given, gratitude. Well, you know, I was taught that, you know, by my chairman, I don't know, y'all probably know him, Akanan Perk Emeru Tutankhamen Bey, also known as Ilu Pleasant Bey, that, you know, when the Prophet left the body, you know, that, you know, certain ones that took the Quran and divided it up. So they had what you call the traditional red book, and then you had, you know, the regular Moorish Quran. So in the red book, you have what they call the adept lessons, right? And I think that's like what 22 or something like that chapters. I ain't for sure. But the 48 chapters, right? That was just, you know, the basic teachings, the holy instructions, and then, you know, the missing 18 years of Yahushua's life, right? Well, what the adept degrees is what some, you know, they say if you ain't an adept, you ain't supposed to have these lessons. See what I'm saying? Well, I wasn't taught that way. You know, I was taught by an adept to where the Prophet brought, you know, 70 chapters. And so to withhold certain what they call adept degrees from the people is pretty much you robbing them. You know what I mean? Because you are not allowing them to unfold as the blood unfolds. You see what I'm saying? So you giving ones a certain measure, but you ain't giving them the whole thing. You see what I'm saying? So this is the Quran I study from. We'll get this from our Moorish American government. And it has 70 chapters, you know, and in the red book, it goes off into a little bit more adept learning lessons in regards to dealing with the self, some of the foes that you gonna deal with within yourself. See what I'm saying? You know, and and if you look around, the reason why these things need to be, especially that so-called red book, this needs to be brought out so everybody can glean from it, is because these lessons that the prophet brought forth unto us is addressing certain mental as well as spiritual issues that we gonna have, that everybody is gonna encounter it. You see what I'm saying? That's why, you know, one of the first degree is obedience. But then it say, purify your heart and mind with love. Well, you know, on this journey, the mind has to be purified with love, because there is where you will sit and be able to perceive the truth that's being brought forth, and you won't be deviated or moved by your passions. You see what I'm saying? So this is why these is important, you know what I mean? And not to take up too much time, but you know, these adept degrees or things, I'm gonna say it like this. I'm gonna say that these adept degrees was taken out, right, and only given them to certain one because of Masonic influence. And so these things need to be, you know, brought forth to the people so everybody can get it, and we all build from the same platform. Because, you know, if you don't know how to address certain foes or certain issues that you're dealing with within yourself, right, and then you come into somebody else's house, or you congregate with your brother and your sister, right, you still carrying that same slave mind frame, because it was never addressed through, you know, those degrees or those lessons that was supposed to be brought forth. You see what I'm saying? So when I say that our Moorish Holy Quran has 70 chapters, that is included with the 48 that you pretty much receive from the Moorish Science Temple of America. And then they have another, 22, you know, in the red book that is supposed to be only reserved for, you know, adepts, and you got to be pulled up pretty much and vetted to see, you know, if you comprehend those, or where, you know, we don't teach that. You know, we giving the people truth, raw and uncut, you know, whether you like it or not, hey, that's on you, but you can't never say that you didn't know. You see what I'm saying? So, you know, that's where the 70 chapters came from. And, you know, that's the way I was taught, you know, and, you know, I just, you know, give honors to the prophet, and for allowing me to be able to receive those lessons, because it's a lot of these things that I'm using on a day-to-day basis with my family, my relationships with, you know, people I come in contact with, that is, you know, is beneficial. And it also aids and assists in uplifting fallen humanity, because once you apply the lesson to yourself, you become the message that you bring. And that then when you go into the midst of darkness or into the midst of wickedness, your light will shine, and you will be able to light others' candles or enlighten their minds also. Islam.
Islam. Appreciate your measure, Muslim. We definitely appreciate that. Again, we would only know that by having this dialogue. And so, you know, because again, I never heard of it before today, so it wouldn't be prudent of me to try to challenge a position I ain't even hear. So I'm so appreciative that you're willing to share that measure of information. What I can say in terms of how we were taught, because this is not to negate how you were taught. We have mad love and respect for Elihu Pleasant Bay. You know, we give honors to the Moor. He's a published author trying to bring light to the people with the Exhuling of the Nation, which was the first Moorish literature I actually read outside of the Prophet's works. And so, you know, we definitely want to give honors to that Moor. I didn't want to make any assumptions. I saw the flag in the background, and I'm aware that is a flag that, you know, that particular body is on. So that particular body has. You know, we don't have no negative things to say about anything in the Muslim industry. So we're just gonna share real briefly, you know, how our system works. And so in our system, we're those particular lessons that he's referring to are only made available to the sheiks. These are lessons within our body. And I'm sure other bodies as well. You know what I'm saying? That they go under that particular system. But I had got into a discussion with Moors on Facebook about, like, you know, certain bodies have certain titles that the Prophet didn't have at his time. And I had to explain to them that Act 1 gives the power to make laws to the Grand Sheik, the chairman, with the assistance of the Prophet and the Grand Body. So if you see a Moor that has customs that are not like yours, you can't automatically assume that Moor is out of order. You you don't know how that legislation came into being before you jump on that board. How do you know if they meant it? You have to do it on a case by case basis. And if you just hearing about it, how you know what they doing is right or wrong? And so we take the humility and accept your understanding and share our understanding. And you know, that's how we bridge the gap between other bodies. We give honors to their leaders, to their elders, because at the end of the day, they're out there teaching our people that they're not Negro, Black, and colored, that they're Moorish Americans. So how can I look at this person in a different way than I look at the Moors around me who are doing the same thing with the understanding that they have? And that's why we encourage not just our members, but guests to share that measure, because we share whatever perspectives that are shared with us. We share it on social media through our YouTube platforms and our various other platforms. Our YouTube channel, by the way, is called Brooklyn Moors. If you type in Brooklyn Moors and type in the word Moorish in YouTube, our channel will pop up. We also have, by the same name, you'll find our Instagram. You know, we also known as Moorish Scientific America 21-3. So you're able to find us under those particular titles. And once again, one of the highlights of the meeting is definitely building rapport from another perspective, from another understanding, and being able to share our understanding. Because now I feel like we're both stronger walking away, and the entire community at large will be stronger because they'll get to hear other side. You understand? So we prefer to use the terms bills because of debate. The debate automatically assumes contention, where a bill is about gaining understanding. So we want to be real careful with the type of words we use, because that's the spirit in which you're going to come when it comes to discussions. Don't get it twisted, though. We draw our sword, too. You know what I'm saying? We will defend rigorously the prophet and our teaching. At the same time, you know, we build with our brothers, too. So we'll take our brick and we'll lay our brick right next to theirs. Islam. And so with that being said, unfortunately, boys, we have reached the time of the conclusion of our meeting. This was a very wonderful and extraordinary meeting. I look forward to sharing this meeting on social media. And once again, want to thank you and give honors to all our guests, all our members, all the sheiks, grand sheiks, supreme grand sheiks, or whatever titles that you find throughout the Moorish movement that are all unified in the cause of uplifting for humanity. And honors to our prophet, to our leader founders that enable us all to share and bask in the light that we have in existence today. So without further ado, I'm going to bring our Sheikh Muhammad on to close out our meeting according to law. We must open and close the property. Open and close property according to the circumstances.
Islam, the Holy Quran of the Moorish Science Temple of America. Know yourself and your Father God Allah, that you may learn to love instead of hate. Every man needs to worship under his own vine and fig tree, the United of Asia. Islam. We now close this meeting as we've begun it with the Moorish American prayer. I ask that everyone face the east, feet at a 45-degree angle,